Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
What you just saw is the fall of the Berlin Wall. I'm going to be asking three main questions: why it happened, when it happened, and how it happened. But before I explain why it happened, I'm going to give you some background. In 1945, at the end of World War II, Berlin was almost wiped out. A third of the city was destroyed. 152,000 people died. Allies took over Berlin later in that year. Germany was divided into 4 zones. They were controlled by France, England, United States, and the Soviet Union. So now let's get into why the Berlin Wall was built. The Berlin Wall was built because the Soviet Union wanted to keep citizens from East Berlin escaping to West Berlin, because their life was much better. Their life was much better because they had more freedom and they could spend their money however they wanted, instead of giving it to their government. Right after World War II ended and the Berlin Wall came up, there was something called the Cold War. The Cold War was mainly between the Soviet Union and the United States, and their political and economical differences.
Not enough space for building anymore. It was everything tight. We were on an isle.
Well, even though West Berlin was the free part of Berlin, West Berlin was always considered to be the outpost, not only of West Germany, but of the whole Western world, which had been, of course, the capital of Germany, now a kind of decapitated head, but a head that had to be continually fed. They pumped millions of Deutschmarks into it just to keep people there.
We were relying on the Allies. That was our important hope, that the Allies would always try to keep Berlin going.
What you just saw are interviews from people about their thoughts on the Cold War. This is called life on both sides of the wall. During the Cold War, there was something known as the Iron Curtain. The Iron Curtain split Europe in half. One side was communist, the other side was capitalistic. But Berlin was on the East German side. So now I'm going to help you understand the difference between capitalism and communism. Capitalism is that you have more freedom. You can go and buy a house, or when you have a job, you don't have to give your money to the government right away. You can keep it all. It's a system of how the country's trade is controlled by a private owner. But on the other hand, communism, the government just controls everything, whether it's money or just speaking out freely. People can't just be free. They have to give their money to the government when they get paid for a job. They can't keep it for themselves. So I hope you get the difference between capitalism and communism. Well, to answer your question about why the wall was built to separate communistic East Berlin and capitalistic West Berlin. The Berlin Wall was built in the Cold War in August of 1961. It was torn down in November of 1991. This marked the end of the Cold War. So now I'm going to be explaining how the Berlin Wall was built. The wall was built by the Soviet Union to keep people from East Berlin escaping to West Berlin because they had a much better life. They had the freedom of speech, and they had the freedom to keep their own money instead of giving it to their government. So now that you have a better understanding of what the Cold War was and what the Berlin Wall was and why it was built, the barrier being broken is the barrier between capitalism and communism. And the political differences between the United States and the Soviet Union and their allies slowly started to fade away. So the significance of the Berlin Wall being torn down was breaking the barrier between communism and capitalism for the United States and the Soviet Union. Thank you for watching my documentary on the Berlin Wall.